Hello, fifth graders. Welcome to Backcountry Cooking Guild. This lesson is for October 1st. So today we're going to be talking about dehydrating food. So last guild we talked about sun drying. So that's one method of dehydrating food, which only requires the sun. Today we are talking about dehydrating food using a countertop dehydrator and our oven. So when dried, most produce loses about 60% and can lose up to 90% of its weight when it's fresh. So that's a lot of weight that it loses when it becomes dehydrated. So what are some foods that are worth dehydrating? So some fruits and vegetables are really difficult to dehydrate. So some people say that it's not worth it, or sometimes the food is more expensive, so people say it's not worth it. But these fruits and vegetables listed are ones that work really well, are cheaper to buy, and beginner friendly. So if you are just starting out dehydrating food, if you've never done it before, try something on this list. You're likely to have more success than if you just pull something random. And if you don't have anything on this list, that's totally okay. Try something random. It might turn out great. Who knows? So some of my favorite things to dehydrate, some of the fruits are bananas. I love dehydrating bananas. Oftentimes when you buy dehydrated bananas at the store, they have a lot of preservatives, or um, they have high fructose corn syrup coated on it, so they're super sweet, and I prefer just the sweetness of the natural banana. I also really like pureeing peaches and making fruit leather. That's one of my favorite things to dehydrate. I love dehydrating strawberries and watermelon. That is a really funky one. It's dehydrates really interesting. So if you've never done that before, if you've never had dehydrated watermelon, I highly recommend it. It's funky. Um, so vegetables, some of my favorite vegetables on this list to dehydrate are hot peppers. I've done a lot of hot peppers. Kale, I love making kale chips. Beets, and sweet potatoes, like making sweet potato chips. Those are just some of my favorites. But all of these fruits and vegetables listed are awesome to dehydrate. So dehydrating can be energy expensive. So if you're sun dehydrating, remember that's free. But if you're dehydrating using an oven or a countertop dehydrator, that can be more expensive. So apart from the fresh food costs, which sometimes that can be pricey, the greatest expense in dehydrating food is the energy required to generate the heat. So not even necessarily the dehydrator itself, but because your dehydrator is going to be running for typically about like 8 to 12 hours, that is going to require a lot of energy, so that can be expensive. So if it's warm and dry out, like we talked about in the last lesson of sun drying, consider sun drying because that is free. So using an oven to dehydrate food. So if you don't have a countertop dehydrator, you can use your oven. So sometimes it takes longer to dehydrate your food. Some people say that it takes almost twice as long to dehydrate food in the oven rather than using a countertop dehydrator. So if you're going to be using an oven, you want to make sure that your oven has a fine temperature control so that it can go anywhere between 95 and 160 degrees. Because if it's over 160 degrees, you're no longer dehydrating, you're just cooking the food. And that's not the goal here. We want to dehydrate the food, not cook the food. If you have a pizza stone, make sure that you add it to the oven. That's a good trick, that if you don't have a countertop dehydrator, that you can throw your pizza oven in, and that helps dehydrate the food. So this will hold heat and it'll help buffer the temperature fluctuations. So it helps stabilize the temperature in the oven. Another trick is if you have drying racks that won't melt in the oven, that they're like stainless steel, they're okay to go in the oven. You want to use those because that's going to help circulate the air around your food. So if you just put your food on the oven racks, it's gonna fall through, right? So you wanna make sure that you have something with tiny little slats. So like a drying rack or like a cookie sheet or cookie rack that you would put your cookies on to cool down. So you can place your fruits and vegetables on that so that they won't slip through the oven. And then I like to put my rack on top of a cookie sheet just in case. So countertop food dehydrators, they're great because as you see in this picture, the shelves are stackable or the trays are stackable. It has a temperature and time control. So you can set it for like 110 degrees for 12 hours and it'll shut off after that. So that's really a good way to control the temperature and the time. It's easy to wash, so it's easy to take apart, typically dehydrators are, and it causes the food to dry more evenly than if you were doing it in an oven, because there is a ton of airflow and circulation in a countertop food dehydrator. I love this picture. It's like old school dehydrating. So when you're using racks, you want to use stainless steel racks or you want to use safe food grade plastic trays. You want to stay away from any other type of metals because those aren't good to use as a dehydrating method. Make sure that you don't use aluminum foil or wax paper. Stay away from those things when you are dehydrating food. You want to make sure that when you have your dehydrating sauces or you're dehydrating fruit leather, making fruit leather, that you have a plastic lined, so not wax paper, but like a plastic tray that you're going to be putting on that. Because otherwise, if you just put it on the racks, the sauce or the fruit leather is just going to fall through the cracks. Make sure it doesn't fall through the cracks. So when you're preparing your ingredients for dehydrating, you want to use fresh ingredients. So if you use ingredients that aren't fresh or maybe they're blemished, when you dehydrate them, it's gonna show all those blemishes. That dehydrating it doesn't hide those flaws in the fruit. It's going to show up. So you want to make sure you wash your hands first and foremost, and then you want to wash your produce. So we want to make sure we have very good hygiene because otherwise we can get bacteria on our food and we don't want that. You want to also make sure that you sanitize your equipment with white vinegar. So your trays are really great to sanitize, even your countertops to make sure that there's no bacteria anywhere. And then you want to peel, slice, and dehydrate. So remember when you are slicing your fruits and vegetables, you want to slice them all the same width so that then they all dry as evenly as possible. So you want to make it tiny slivers, so tiny, 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 at least 1/4 of an inch. So you want to do that as your maximum. 1/4 of an inch thick. So that's pretty thin. The thinner, the quicker it's going to dry. So now that we've talked about dehydrating, go ahead and try it out. So you can try dehydrating fruits or you can try dehydrating vegetables. You don't need to go out and buy any special equipment. All you need is you need parent permission. Make sure that the grown-up who lives in your house is aware that you're going to be cutting things. So you want parent supervision on this when you're using the knife, or at least get their permission to use a knife. And then also get their permission to use an oven or to use the dehydrator. So try it out. It doesn't have to be anything on the list. It can be whatever you want. I hope it goes great, and please let me know how it goes. Have fun, guys.